That kind of puts us on our next question from Paula that asks what the percentage rate of misdiagnosis is.
Yeah, so well, that's a question that I looked at very carefully. So I looked at all the studies since the 1960s where people had looked at this question and found that in the published studies, about 4% of patients had been misdiagnosed. So that these are people who were told they had FND but turned out to have MS or epilepsy. We did another big study in Scotland in over 1,000 patients and found a much lower rate than that actually in a more recent study. And I would hope modern investigations and assessment reduce that. So that was about 0.5%. What you have to, and you might think 4%, that's really bad, but actually if you look at it the other way around, what proportion of patients are diagnosed with MS and actually have FND, it's probably a bit higher. It's probably 5 or 6%. You know, what proportion of patients are told they've got epilepsy and take treatment for 20 years and then discover they've got dissociative seizures? Probably 5 to 10%. So we should be worried about we should always try and be accurate with our diagnoses, but doctors can never be 100%. Sometimes people have both as well. So it's about 5 to 10% in both directions, or it's a bit less than 5%.
Well, I'm glad that you also mentioned that some have both, because I think that that's what we run into often, is that it's kind of this thought that it's either or. And so even when someone's had an FND diagnosis and then they get a new diagnosis, there's often like, oh, I was misdiagnosed, but you know, there's a good possibility that there was an overlay there of both. And do you feel like if we can learn to accept those functional symptoms a little bit better, then we would start to recognize them in many other illnesses as kind of overlay?
Yeah, I think we would. And I think just as we say, you know, if someone's got MS, then they might have migraine as well, and you would treat their migraine. You can have more than one thing. And actually, I am very interested in the patients I see. For example, I have a number of patients who have dual diagnosis, so they have Parkinson's and FND, or MS and FND. And I think what happens when you think about that long enough is you realize it's actually, you kind of want the problem to be FND rather than MS, because FND has that potential for reversibility through rehabilitation that these other conditions don't always have. So I think we should be looking for FND and being happy to make the diagnosis alongside neurological diseases, and not just calling it functional overlay either, and saying, you know, you have FND and Parkinson's, and let's hope that most of this is FND, for example.